What's going on, family? Scrapbook Boxing, Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuff series. I will continue to examine 100 years of the greatest 150 black fighters of all time. Now, I wish I could show a little bit more of the fighter, but that's what I can fit in the screen. But this is Tommy Bell. Tommy Bell was a welterweight out of Youngstown, Ohio. And he had two other brothers. But the two fighters were Tommy Bell and the younger brother, Bobby Bell. Bobby Bell was a featherweight. My dad knew Tommy Bell. He used to train when he was in New York at Stillman's gym. And he told me about Tommy Bell. Tommy Bell was a very serious person. Didn't laugh, didn't smile. But he worked his butt off in the gym. And he tried to learn his craft as best he possibly could. And that's important when you're judging fighters. Now, who's Tommy Bell? He was born March 13th, 1923 in Youngstown, Ohio. He was a welterweight who stood 5'7". And like I said, he had two other brothers. Now, Tommy Bell was inconsistent. He's not on this list. I just wanted to recognize Tommy Bell. Because I like Tommy Bell. I had a lot of respect for him. My dad did as well. He actually knew Tommy Bell. But Tommy Bell would start his professional debut July 21st, 1942. He fought in Toledo, Ohio. And he would lose his first fight in 4 rounds. Perfectly fine. Because Ray Robinson was a hell of a fighter. And he had problems in his career. Henry Armstrong lost his first professional fight. He was stopped in the 3rd round. Pernell Whitaker lost his first 3 amateur fights. So that's fine. Sometimes you don't get acclimated properly into the next division, or in this case, as a professional. Because Tommy Bell was a very good amateur fighter. So then he would knock out a fighter in the first round, July 23rd, 1942. It was actually 2 days later. And he knocked out Tom Gunther. But then he would lose to Chuck Taylor in Pittsburgh, September 22nd, 1942. And he would lose to Lou Woods, October 2nd, in 6 rounds, 1942. Kid Chicken in Detroit, he would have a 6-round draw. Then he would lose to O'Neal Bell out of Detroit, November 20th, in 6 rounds. So that's the inconsistency that I'm talking about. But then he would have a couple of knockout wins. January 1st, 1943 and February 22nd of 1943. Chicago and Detroit. He would knock out Tommy James and Sam Hughes. He would have a couple of wins, and then he would go on a 6 knockout winning streak. And one of the opponents were Harold Smith. Harold Smith was a very good fighter. And so that was impressive. 1944, he would take on B.B. Wright, January 1st of that year. He would knock him out in 2 rounds. That was impressive. B.B. Wright was a very good fighter as well. Chuck Hunter of Cleveland, he would knock him out. So he went on a 10 winning streak. 9 of them were knockouts in 1944. 1945 is when he started to fall short. January 16th, he would lose 10 rounds to Ray Robinson in Cleveland, Ohio. But then he would have a draw, February 12, 1945, to B.B. Wright in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. 10-round draw. Ozzie Bulldog Harris, February 26, 1945. He would lose to Ozzie Bulldog Harris. Ozzie Bulldog Harris was from Pittsburgh. Very good fighter was Ozzie Bulldog Harris. But he would lose to him. He would lose to Jake LaMotta, January 11th, 1946. New York's Madison Square Garden. He would lose to him in 10 rounds. He would lose to Jake LaMotta, July 6, 1945. New York's Madison Square Garden. No shame on losing to Jake LaMotta. But the problem he's having, he would face Jake LaMotta again 1947 of March 14th. New York's Madison Square Garden. And he would defeat Paul Lewis, very good fighter. Jackie Wilson, he would knock him out in 4 rounds. He would lose to Buster Tyler, March 8th, 1948, New York's Madison Square Garden. He would lose to Kid Gavilan, April 26, 1948. He would defeat Cecil Hudson, November 16, 1948. So Tommy Bell just wasn't consistent. Doesn't mean he wasn't a good fighter. He was an outstanding fighter. Very, very good fighter. See, them guys at that time, the losses were not important. It was the performance that they would display in the ring. And these guys would fight with two hands, two-fisted punches. They were crowd-pleasing to an audience. And they fought all the time. They didn't stop fighting. But to place him on this list would be an injustice to some of the fighters that we would have to remove to get him on this list. And we're breaking the criteria standard that we go by. And that's consistency. So Tommy Bell didn't make the cut for this list of 100 years of the greatest 150 black fighters of all times. We're going to be moving on to the 60s and the 70s, and then the 80s, and you're going to see the difference. You're going to be seeing guys like George Foreman and Ali and Joe Frazier. Well, we talked about Joe Frazier already. You're going to be seeing a lot of other fighters that would be a little more consistent. When we get into the 80s with Ray Leonard and Thomas Hearns, Michael Elijah Day, and Ira the Blade Barkley, Poison Jr. Jones, and Kevin Kelly. You'll see the consistency begin to change. So that's why we have to be very careful, because we don't have a lot of room. 150 fighters. Right now we're up to 65 fighters already. So tough task, but Curtis and I, we had to take our time and choose the fighters correctly. So Scrapbook Boxing, Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuffs series, on behalf of Curtis Anderson, all great fights and all great fighters will never be forgotten on this channel. Thanks for watching, and continue to watch. Your favorite fighter may be placed on this list. 100 years of the greatest 150 fighters, black fighters of all times. Thanks for watching. And before I leave, I just want to give credit to Tommy Bell. He did defeat Fritzy Zivik, so that was a very good win. See you in the next video.